Charles, dumb Joe Biden is happy to kill more.
He's not the only one, too. I mean,
Let's get out of this jam here.
This party of rhinos and Democrats across the board is just itchy on the trigger finger. I mean, you pick a conflict, they're all in.
Yeah.
They want to start. I'm not saying I disagree with this, but let's really think it through. They want to have both sides now want to declare war on the Mexican cartels.
Oh, I know. I saw that.
I mean, that's a nice concept if you have an open southern border. If you control our border, I can understand it. But with an open southern border, you're just asking for even more people to come flooding across the border. And certainly, there's no appetite in this country, I don't think, for having people conscripted.
Is that what they're talking about?
Well, you're not going to get enough.
Yeah, how could we have more wars?
You're not filling the military now. You start talking about, hey, there's going to be a shooting war across a large border in the south, and by the time we get through with that, we're going to have to declare war on Canada while we're at it.
Why that?
Well, because there are people flooding across our northern border too. The cartels have figured out the borders are open, so
How do they get to Canada though?
Well, easy. They can, they boat,
take a flight.
You name it, flights. And it used to be, at least when I was a kid, the Democrats were the peaceniks.
Yeah,
they were right. And now the very same people who were burning bras and marching against the Vietnam War.
Jane Fonda wants to murder people.
Yeah, you're pro-life. Okay, I kill you. I kill you. I mean,
that's crazy.
That bitch has been crazy for much of her adult life, if not all of her life.
Yeah.
She was pretty, though.
Well, I was listening to her Hanoi. I don't know that I've actually heard it before. She's calling the U.S. soldiers war criminals and hanging out with the Viet Cong.
I know.
Who told her to do that? And why didn't they just shoot her the second she showed up?
She was John Kerry was more or less doing the same thing. Bill Clinton was not in the military. He was a draft dodger. But he was over there in Europe as a Rhodes Scholar protesting against the war. Now, I have actually no problem with, and I would encourage people who think that a war is ill-advised to make their voices be counted.
Yeah.
But in the middle of an actual conflict, to be negotiating with the enemy, as Kerry did, in violation of the Logan Act, actually, when he was a student. And I have it on pretty good authority that Kerry was turned down for a prestigious law school. He went, I think, to a lesser one, I forget which one it was, but he was turned down because the law school in question didn't think that Kerry would be able to pass the bar when the truth came out about, if it came out, about what he had been doing over in Vietnam while he was in the armed forces.
Why would that affect the bar?
That's what this person claimed.
Huh. Well, so Charles, before we get too deep into our conversation here, it's important that people know we're going to be doing the full show in the First Amendment Forum because there's just too much to discuss with everything that went on at the weaponization of government hearing. You and I haven't really had a chance to do a full follow-up on that. Yeah. And so many other things. So in just about 15 minutes, people will be able to join us on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, and now, Charles, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. I put out an article on Substack about Stacey Plaskett, the so-called delegate.
What a moron.
Just so rude. I mean, her and Dan Goldman don't seem to realize, and Matt Taibbi said it well on Twitter, they work for us.
I know. That's what I would have said.
They were so condescending. I mean, they should be treating Matt Taibbi like they're the maitre d' at a restaurant and he's the customer.
Right, and he's a regular customer who is known to tip well. I mean, no, the attitude of these buffoons, and they're most of all buffoons, and some of them are even well-meaning. Overscheduled. I don't think Jordan's a buffoon, but if I had anything to say about how the House and Senate were run, I would say, listen, none of this bullshit that you're going to serve on multiple different committees and this and that. You're going to, until we fix the top 10 problems.
Focus on this.
that face this country, there's going to be a committee to fix problem number one.
Right.
And then a committee to fix problem number two. And if you don't fix it, we're
You're
going to campaign against you.
Yeah.
So there's no point in your being in the House or the Senate. We got to fix these problems. Instead, all these people are, vice chairman of this committee, chairman of this subcommittee, whatever, running around, giving television interviews.
Because isn't that how you get money?
Maybe, but to the extent there's any money left.
Right, well, that's the other thing, is that everybody on the news, I love it when they do this. They're like, oh, is there going to be a bank run tomorrow? Is there? Is there? And then everybody's at home like, oh, I better go to the bank. Run, don't walk.
Yeah, well.
Pretty bad with Silicon Valley Bank, right?
Well, I think pretty bad with the structure of the American economy and the Chinese economy and the European economies. There, we have the biggest sector, the biggest swath of activity around the world is government, far bigger than individual activity or business activity. And government is just spending money at a pace that it cannot ever be made up with taxes.
Right.
And there's never any accounting. Today, there's a piece in something I read, Free Republic, about the Inspector General estimating that COVID relief funds have been plundered to the tune of $268 billion. I don't think that's close to being right. I think it's much more than that.
Well, because I think you and I would consider certain things that they might call legitimate to be separate plundering, of course. But somebody was on, not Andreessen, but somebody like that was on Twitter talking about how Janet Yellen went to Ukraine to make sure that they could all get their pensions and whatever.
It's outrageous.
But not doing anything with this bank and all of the, as I understand it, this is a bank that venture capitalists would say, oh, okay, startup, 21st century 3D, you want $5 million to build a 3D camera, you got a bank over here, and we're going to put all the money here, and your payroll is going to come out of here. And then now come next week, nobody working for that small startup waiting for the money is going to get paid, and they're all going to quit, their startup is going to fail, and it's going to have a domino cascading effect.
Right. Well, I've been watching the venture capital land for a while, fully expecting, internet meltdown 2.0 for some time, and I think this is actually, there have been other startups. There was one, I think, did an initial public offering at a valuation of like $5 billion, maybe less than 2 years ago, that just is completely tits up gone.
Wow. Which one was that?
I forget. They all have weird.
$5 billion.
Well, and so when you go back to it in the original internet bust up, they did a study. They did an autopsy, I should say, of the industry afterwards, and they concluded that in a substantial number of cases, the underwriting commissions that were collected on the initial public offerings and other securities offerings for these high-tech firms, the commissions earned, in theory, by the banks were greater than the revenues of the company.
Oh, yeah.
And so what was going on, it was just...
How was that not a scam?
Well, it was just a bunch of morons in crazy outfits and funny hats and shoes on skateboards running around, spewing trash and getting cash from these bankers, didn't know what they were doing. And, it worked for a while, because I remember I was in England during that one time, and I was in some, I think, bank, and they had in the lobby the prospectuses for some of these internet incubator companies.
Right.
And it was literally, it was comical. You start the company on March 1st. You'd issue a press release saying you've got a major order in prospect from Apple or something, and then you mark up the value of the company for that. Then you enter in a joint venture with some other big company, and you're just pumping out press releases that you can use, in theory, to justify an increase in the value of, in some cases in a year, 10x in a year, which never happens. Never happens in real life. It's all bullshit. And what I remember back then in the day, I think it was late 99, 2000, I was spending a fair amount of time seeing my brother in Brazil. Just bought a new apartment. And he had one of those, not flat screen, but flatter screen TVs that he'd just gotten, and we were watching CNBC.
TV's like, hey, you look really nice today, Charles.
No,
Flattered.
and what would happen is you know there'd be one company that would announce that it wanted to, you know, go public at this value, and I look at the numbers and I say, this is fucking ridiculous. And then instead of going public at that value, go public at 3 times that value, you know, and it was just like this land rush mentality as to valuing these things. But people were increasingly getting skeptical. And somebody was, I think it wasn't pets.com, but it was some kind of delivery thing run by a 27-year-old Korean kid who had worked at Goldman.
Yeah.
And he had originally...
They would deliver anything to you.
Right, and it was Chase. It was
called.
Chase Capital Partners that actually had, you know, some vetting meeting, and this team shows up, and I think it was a pretty senior guy at Chase Capital Partners said, okay, I bet you can't get, you know, boysenberry ice cream or some ridiculous thing. And sure enough, and they got it, and on that basis they valued the thing at some monstrous valuation, and it was going up. But this was an interview where
like Kazaa.com
where
or something like that.
where somebody was asking, some CNBC guy was saying, okay, you know, Mr. Kim or whatever your name is, what's you know, how do you justify the tremendous increase that you claim you deserve in valuation? And the guy looks at him and says, we got killer apps, man.
Oh, God.
Killer apps. The guy's like, well, what do you mean by that? They're killer. You know?
Who are you going to kill?
Well, and that's where, you know, that's the place we're at, I think, in a lot of these VC venture capital valuations. And on the subject of killing people, Hillary Clinton gave an interview.
Right, more weapons
where
to Ukraine.
She thinks the Ukraine project's going really well, and she wants to step up the financial support to Ukraine so we can kill more Ukrainians, actually, are getting killed.
But that money's going to her, no doubt.
No doubt.
So that's going well, according to her.
Yeah, to amplify the trust funds for her 3 snot-nosed grandkids.
Here's the original train tracks, Charles.
Looks like there are trees and there's a forest in the middle of those tracks, Jay.
It's kind of cool.
It is nice.
But yeah, we're going to be getting in depth on all of this stuff as we walk the High Line here. Yeah.
You moving into this building here?
I like this building. It's very Jetsons-y, but no.
It looks like a cruise ship.
Yeah, something like that. I got a video on YouTube the other day about companies that are making personal VTOL aircraft. You know what that is?
Vertical takeoff
and landing.
Or land? Oh, VTOL or VTOL?
It's just, I think it's VTOL, but it is vertical takeoff and landing. But anyway, some of them seem dangerous. Very dangerous. Like you're going to get ground into a milkshake if you fall out of the thing.
Well, I mean, given that the FAA guy is a complete moron.
Any answers to the questions.
And that we have great difficulty finding qualified pilots, and our genius solution under Pete Buttboy is that we ought to lower the qualification requirements for people to be pilots.
Did he really say that?
I think that his Department of Transportation said that, whether he also said that.
Wow, that's a great idea.
You know, we're having trouble getting qualified people. I know, we'll just lower the requirements. What could happen with a plane?
Yeah, what could go wrong?
And Captain Sully Sullenberger, I think, made an impassioned plea saying, listen, this is really stupid.
Oh, did he?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Well, I mean, it is really stupid.
Yes, it is. But this is it. I mean, you've said it. Pete Buttigieg is like 40. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And he's coming in there. I mean, we've made these analogies a million times. It's as if I showed up at Dillon Reed and started telling you what to do. Or if you arrived on set at Spider-Man and started telling me how to set the 3D camera. It's
I've been doing this for 7 years, Jason. I know nothing about doing the film part of it, but, you know, I can pretend.
I've looked at this for a while. I should be an expert at it. Yeah, Hillary Clinton. So I don't know. I mean, one of the other things that I saw that was very disconcerting is that they were saying, oh, well, wait a minute. So we're out of time here, Charles.
All right.
But what we're going to do is people can join us on the sponsor exclusive segment on the First Amendment Forum here in subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. and crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Thanks to everybody who sponsors the show, keeping it going. Charles is going to have his Substack starting soon at charlesortel.substack.com. And people should also follow Charles on Twitter at Charles Ortel. We'll see everybody in 5 minutes. Oh, what's that?
I was just going to say, in addition, we've been doing a lot of work with document.no.
Oh, yeah.
And they really have quite a sizable operation in Oslo and stringers around the world. And they pump out a lot of videos and a lot of print stuff. So I'd recommend going on to document.no as well.
There we go. Excellent. All right. Well, we'll see everybody in less than 5 minutes on Subscribestar, Patreon, Odyssey, and Substack. Hey, Adam, how you doing?